Hey everyone, it's Deborah Poneman, founder of Yes to Success, where we share knowledge and tools for you to live your ultimate life. So there's been a lot of talk as of late on what freedom means, especially here in the US. Is it the right to speak our truth without fear of repercussions? Is it the right to bear arms of any sort in any circumstance? Is it to live in a true democracy in a country where the rights of all are honored and freedom is not centralized or dictated by a few? So I've been pondering that question, and I began thinking about a different kind of freedom, or actually the basis to outer freedom, and that is inner freedom. You know, when most people think about the great Austrian psychiatrist and psychotherapist Viktor Frankl, they don't usually think of the genius who developed the psychological approach known as logotherapy. Instead, they justifiably think of the Holocaust survivor who gave new meaning to the word freedom. In Viktor Frankl's classic book, Man's Search for Meaning, he famously said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." What I believe that Frankl was saying was simply that each of us has total freedom, because freedom is not something dictated by our outer circumstances, but rather determined by our inner state. If Frankl could experience freedom in a concentration camp where the absolute worst of human depravity was inflicted on the inmates, can we not experience it when we feel trapped in a job or relationship or a life circumstance or some inexplicable happening in our country? And more often than not, we notice that we are prisoners of our own making. If we learn nothing else from Viktor Frankl, it's that freedom is a choice. We have to make it every moment, and there is always a choice. So let's look at some things that we might be able to do in our own lives to achieve the type of freedom that seems unattainable by us mere mortals. First, have a purpose greater than yourselves. One of the observations Frankl made was that the prisoners who survived had a purpose that inspired them to keep going no matter what, a responsibility to something greater than themselves. For some, it was a child who they managed to send off to a country where they would be safe, or a spouse they believed would be waiting for them once they were liberated. For others, it was an unfinished book or a piece of art or a scientific work they had begun and not been able to finish. They knew their contribution would make the planet a better place, and they needed to complete it before they died. Those who held a vision of what they wanted to create in the world, even if it just lived in their hearts, were the ones who made it out alive. The vision gave them the courage to live in a sense of inner freedom. In his teachings, Frankl often refers to the words of Nietzsche, when Nietzsche said, "He who knows the why for his existence will be able to bear almost any how." Next, do what I call sharing your bananas. So in my life, I've often worked and played amongst the wealthy and successful. I mean, I'm not BFFs with Warren Buffett or Elon Musk, although I did once go on a private safari with Richard Branson and his extended family. But I do have to say that the majority of my friends and associates statistically are in the top 1% of the world's wealthiest individuals. But are they the most free? Although I hesitate to be the judge of how free they consider themselves to be, I'd say that some of the people I've grown to know and love who live in mud huts in Haiti are far more free. Why? Well, I believe the answer is illustrated in something that Marianne Williamson once said to me. I just returned home from a developing country and was telling her about my visit to a community of people who lived under blue tarps in a junkyard, but seemed so happy. It seemed so incongruous to me that these people just had continual smiles on their faces. And she quoted to me a quote that goes like this: "The reason these people are happy is that if they have 2 bananas, they will always give one away. The reason so many people we know are so miserable is that they have all the bananas they want and they have no interest in sharing. Frankl saw men who had everything taken away from them, including their families, their homes, their livelihoods, their possessions, even their names that became numbers tattooed on their arms, but they never lost their freedom to share their bananas. Frankl said, and this is another quote, and I hope that I'm quoting it accurately. He said, "We who lived in the camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others and giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Frankl even recounts a time when a guard, at great risk to himself, secretly gave him a piece of bread. Frankl said, "It was far more than the small piece of bread which moved me to tears at the time. It was the human something that this man gave to me, the word and the look which accompanied the gift." Next, be a decent human being. Yet, even though there were those who shared their figurative bananas, Frankl always shared the story of the senior warden who was a prisoner himself, but who beat other prisoners at even the tiniest indiscretion, leading Frankl to conclude that the mere knowledge that a man was either a camp guard or a prisoner tells us almost nothing. Human kindness can be found in all groups, even those which, as a whole, it would be easy to condemn. Frankl speculated that there are really only two types of people on the planet: decent human beings and indecent human beings, and both can be found everywhere. They exist in every group and in every society. I look at them as free human beings and captive human beings. Those who are bound by hate are not free. Those who can find a way to love and be decent human beings, even in the most unbearable circumstances, are free. You know, I just thought of something, which is a total aside. I remember it must have been 1968, when my brother was accepted at Harvard. It was a very big deal for my family. My parents, although my mother was valedictorian of her high school class, my parents never had the opportunity to go to college. They had to go right to work. But I remember my mother saying to her friends when they were like, "Oh, you must be so proud of your son." And she said over again, over and over again, "I am so proud of Larry, but the most important thing to me is that he is a decent human being." And that's the type of freedom that each of us has the opportunity to experience every day of our lives. Frankl eventually concludes that there is no final answer to the question, what is the true meaning of life? He says that we all need to answer that question for ourselves. But he does say that life essentially tests us at every moment, and the answer is revealed in how we respond. He says that freedom is not found on some mountaintop, but is found daily and hourly in the choices that we make. And finally, Frankl shared, we had to learn ourselves, and furthermore, we had to teach the despairing men that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. So, something for all of us to ponder, especially these days.